Hi, I'm Wajahat Ahmed. I'm a visiting faculty at the OP Jindal Global University. What are the challenges faced by the elderly? So we're going to talk about that. And starting with learning outcomes. To understand the broad realities of old age in the contemporary world, to enable a deeper understanding of the various challenges being faced by the elderly and the rights that stand violated as a result, to enable the development of perspectives on the status of the elderly. Aging comes with varied challenges. Cultural misconceptions and stereotypes pose diverse problems to the elderly. Further, with the fact being that the older persons are not a homogeneous group, the challenges they face in the protection of enjoyment of their human rights vary greatly. Loss of independence is a potential part of the process of aging, as are waning physical abilities and age discrimination. While some continue to lead active lives as part of their community, many others face homelessness, lack of adequate care, or isolation. However, none of these justify the necessity for the elderly to enter old age without dignity. It's for this reason that the different human rights of the elderly, as discussed in the previous section, are being recognized and acknowledged. So, what are the challenges faced by the elderly? In order to appreciate the importance of the various human rights the elderly are entitled to, it is necessary to understand the challenges faced by them during the process of entering old age. Some of the major challenges that the elderly face in the society can be summarized as follows. Ageism. So what is ageism? Discrimination against the age is a social problem that has its roots in the industrial era. With the transformation from agrarian economy to an industrial economy, the social standing of the elderly gradually diminished, with the corroding of the traditional respect for the elderly. Society started viewing the age as a burden, and thus arose the concept of ageism. Ageism implies discrimination based on age. Multiple discriminations is also an essential component, particularly when considering the age-related discrimination, which is often compounded by other grounds of discrimination such as sex, socioeconomic status, ethnicity, or health status. Such a treatment tends to lower the self-esteem of the elderly and will have various psychological implications. It can make them feel a lack of power and control. Further, ageism makes the elderly vulnerable to abuse. They might be denied access to healthcare, work, education, voting, etc. Based on their age. Such kind of discrimination leads to the social exclusion of the elderly and their isolation. Next, we will talk about the lack of healthcare and how it may affect the elderly. Failing health goes hand in hand with the advancing age. This issue is further complicated by the non-availability of timely, good, quality, and age-sensitive healthcare for a large portion of the elderly. The aged face issues like poor accessibility to healthcare services, lack of information and knowledge, high costs of treatment, lack of assistance, inappropriate medication. Thus, it's the need of the hour to provide easy access to good quality healthcare in an age-sensitive manner to all elderly with the necessary care and support, including financial support like health insurance, etc. Next comes in economic insecurity. The elderly increasingly are facing the problem of economic insecurity, either owing to the lack of opportunity or capacity, societal mindsets, limited access to resources, lack of awareness of their rights and entitlements, and the waning of their physical and mental faculties all play a major role in challenging the economic security of the elderly and their independence. Loss of employment can also said to be a major cause for the financial insecurity of the aged. With the growing economic insecurity, the elderly become more and more dependent on the younger generations, which in turn deprive them of their independence. Discrimination in workplace, forced retirements, barriers in accessing the welfare benefits also contribute to their insecurity and dependence. Thus, it's necessary to support the elderly to be economically secure and independent by allowing them to work for the extent possible and facilitating them to engage themselves in some economically productive manner, along with providing welfare benefits like pensions, insurances, etc. to those who are unable to generate income on their own. Next comes the social exclusion and isolation. Isolation and social exclusion is very commonly seen with respect to the elderly. Societal prejudice and family neglect are the root cause of this issue. Though in few instances, isolation can be self-imposed. Many elderly people feel isolated from their families, friends, and community, with the difficulty in access to social, cultural, and recreational activities, as well as public services like transport, public places like parks, forced retirement from employment, and the normal course of life also leads to the feeling of loneliness in the elderly. This further aggravates when they are institutionalized in elderly care homes, away from their families, which is increasingly becoming a common phenomenon in the modern society. The phenomenon of social exclusion of the elderly and feeling of isolation, if not addressed, will have major implications and lead to a tragic deterioration of the quality of life. The involvement of elderly in the happenings of the society, as well as that of the family, will inculcate a sense of inclusion in them. Activities centered on elderly persons involving their time and skills will keep them engaged and enable in mainstreaming them into the society. Next, we will look at the neglect of elderly people. The need to care and assistance increases with the advancing of age. If the necessary care is not provided in a timely manner, the elderly suffer from neglect. The shift from traditional joint families to the present nuclear family structure and the redefined priorities of the modern society are increasingly leading to the neglect of the elderly both by the families as well as the community. Neglect can be of varied forms like lack of interaction, malnutrition, inadequate care, poor hygiene, institutionalization in elderly care, homes, etc. Long-term neglect can have major implications on the elderly by disturbing their mental peace, which in turn might affect their physical as well as mental health. Community awareness and counseling of families might help in addressing this issue. The next thing we would look at is the abuse. The elderly are more vulnerable to abuse. Elderly abuse can be of diverse forms like physical, psychological, sexual, as well as financial abuse. With the growing discrimination against the age and the economic insecurity they are facing, the elderly are more prone to abuse in majority of the cases. The elderly are abused by the caretakers or those close to the victim, like family or friends. So, looking at the prevention of elderly abuse. Prevention of elderly abuse through the legal interventions, awareness generation, and counseling to protect the elderly from the ill treatment is one of the major pressing issues. Then we look at the question of detention. One of the recent challenges that the elderly are facing in the modern society is detention. Detention need not necessarily be in prisons. With the increasing trend of nuclear families, more and more elderly are being institutionalized in elderly care where the movement and interaction with the outside world is restricted. While this is the case with a few, the situation of the aged suffering from illness, especially like that of the dementia or Alzheimer's, etc., is more pathetic. Their life is confined to a single room or a house at the best. In majority of the cases, such restrictions imposed on the elderly will have a direct impact on the quality and standard of life by complicating the issue rather than solving it. The solution to the problem lies in creating awareness, family counseling, and most important of all, by respecting the age and treating them with dignity. Now we'll look at the lack of awareness. The elderly most often experience ignorance. Lack of awareness of their rights is a great concern. Like the awareness of the rights is a grave concern. The elderly are unsure of the benefits they are entitled to, the rights they possess, or the services they can avail. This lack of awareness in most instances leads to their exploitation. Hence, there is a need for generating awareness on the rights of the elderly. Let's conclude and summarize now. Advancing of age is coupled with diverse challenges. Social prejudices, narrow-mindedness, insufficient legal protection, and lack of social awareness and moral values all make the life of the elderly terrifying. Discrimination, fear, illness, lowered self-esteem, dependency, lack of privacy have become the harsh realities of old people. Addressing these concerns of the elderly has become a very big challenge to the states as well as the community. Policy interventions coupled with social awareness alone can put an end to the anguish that the elderly are facing in the modern society. Respecting the aged and treating them with dignity is the only solution to the issue. According legal protection to the rights of the elderly will enable to simplifying the issue. Thank you.